She typed the text message 3 times, deleted it twice, and finally sent a novel-length explanation for why she couldn't attend a birthday party she didn't even want to go to. 3 paragraphs, 2 apologies, 1 detailed breakdown of her schedule that week, all to say what could have been 5 words. I can't make it. Sorry. You know this pattern. You've lived it. That burning need to make people understand, to prevent judgment, to control their perception of you. The exhausting performance of justifying your existence, one explanation at a time. What if I told you, no, scratch that. What actually happens when you stop? Not what you fear might happen. What really happens when you close your mouth, put down your phone, and refuse to explain yourself to people who weren't going to understand anyway. This isn't about being rude. It's about something far more profound, something that might actually save your life. Rachel Chen, 34, senior marketing director, had mastered the art of explanation, but lost the ability to simply say no. Every decision in her life came with footnotes. Every boundary required a dissertation. Every choice demanded a defense. When colleagues asked why she didn't want to grab drinks after work, she'd craft careful responses about her morning workout schedule, her need for quality sleep, her introvert tendencies that required recharge time. When her mother questioned her career choices, Rachel would spend hours on the phone explaining market trends, salary comparisons, 5-year projections. When friends invited her to events she had no interest in attending, she'd construct elaborate excuses involving prior commitments, exhaustion, financial concerns, anything to avoid the simple truth: she just didn't want to go. Her apartment reflected this same pattern, minimalist by design, but not because she loved minimalism. She'd explain, ed away every purchase she didn't make, every experience she declined, every spontaneous moment she killed with overthinking. Her life had become one long explanation of why she was the way she was, rather than simply being that way. Rachel's boyfriend, Marcus, had noticed. "You know you can just say no, right?" He'd mentioned once, gently, after watching her spend 20 minutes texting her sister about why they couldn't babysit that weekend. You don't owe everyone a reason. But she did owe them, didn't she? Without explanations, people would think she was cold, uncaring, difficult. The explanations were armor. They were proof she was good, proof she had valid reasons, proof she wasn't just selfish. That word lived in her chest like a stone. Selfish. The worst thing a woman could be. So she explained, and explained, and explained, until the words lost meaning and her life became a performance she could barely sustain. The breaking point came during a routine Tuesday morning staff meeting when Rachel found herself justifying why she'd taken a sick day the previous week. She wasn't even being questioned. Her boss had simply said, "Good to have you back," and Rachel's mouth opened like a broken faucet. "I had this terrible migraine, and I know I should have pushed through, but my vision was actually blurry, and I tried taking medication, but it wasn't working, and I didn't want to be unproductive at my desk, which would have been worse than just staying home, and I made sure all my deliverables were covered, and I checked my email from bed, and..." Her boss had already turned away. He wasn't listening. Nobody was. They'd moved on to the next agenda item while Rachel was still mid-explanation, talking to people who'd stopped caring after the first 3 words. She sat there, mouth still open, heat crawling up her neck. The humiliation wasn't in being ignored. It was in realizing how desperately she'd needed to be understood by people who hadn't asked. How much energy she'd just burned proving herself to a room that required no proof. That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the moment. But it wasn't just that moment. It was every moment, every text message, every phone call, every conversation where she'd volunteered justifications nobody requested. The sheer volume of her life spent explaining herself to people who would never fully understand and didn't need to. She grabbed her phone at 2 a.m. and started scrolling through her text messages. The pattern was everywhere. "I'd love to, but..." followed by paragraphs. I can't because, followed by essays. I hope you understand, followed by desperate pleas for approval. When had she become this person? When had her voice become one long apology for existing? The answer came with a memory so sharp it felt like glass. Her mother's voice from childhood. If you're going to say no to someone, you better have a good reason. Translation: your no isn't enough. You must earn the right to refuse. Your boundaries are negotiable unless you can prove otherwise. Rachel closed her eyes. She was 34 years old, and still trying to prove to her mother, to her boss, to strangers at parties, to the entire world that she had good enough reasons to want what she wanted and not want what she didn't want. She was so tired. The envelope arrived from her estranged grandmother 2 weeks after the meeting incident, a single handwritten letter that Rachel almost threw away. She hadn't spoken to her father's mother in years. The woman was difficult, everyone said, blunt, uncompromising, the kind of person who said what she meant and didn't apologize for it. Rachel opened it anyway. The letter was short. Rachel, I heard you've been struggling, not from your father. He doesn't talk to me much either, as you know. From your cousin. She says you're exhausted all the time, that you apologize for everything, that you can't make a decision without a committee. I recognize this because I used to be you. Then I learned something that changed my life. If you want to know what it is, call me. If you don't, that's fine too. I won't explain myself. Love, Grandma Ruth. Rachel stared at the letter for an hour. The audacity of it, the complete lack of elaboration, the absence of justification for why she'd reached out or what she wanted or why Rachel should care. Just an offer. Take it or leave it. She called. You actually called, Ruth answered, voice rough with age and cigarettes she'd probably quit decades ago. I gave it 50-50 odds. Why did you write to me? Rachel asked. Because I wanted to. Pause. Does there need to be another reason? Rachel felt something crack open in her chest. I guess not. Good. Now listen. I'm going to tell you something, and you're going to want to argue with me, or explain why it won't work for you, or justify why you're different. Don't. Just listen. Rachel nodded, then realized Ruth couldn't see her. Okay. You think explanations make you good. They don't. They make you exhausting. You think if people understand your reasons, they'll respect your decisions. They won't. They'll just know which buttons to push to change your mind. You think you owe people access to your internal process. You don't. You owe yourself the dignity of a decision that doesn't require a defense. The words landed like stones. Rachel's throat tightened. But if I don't explain, people will think whatever they're going to think regardless of how many words you use. That's the secret nobody tells you. Your explanations don't change minds. They just give people more ammunition. So what? I just become cold? I just stop caring what people think? Ruth laughed, dry and sharp. No, baby. You stop trying to control what people think. Big difference. You care about yourself enough to let others be wrong about you. Silence stretched between them. Rachel could hear her own breathing. I'm going to give you a framework, Ruth continued. I call it the silence protocol. It's not about being silent. It's about being sovereign. Her grandmother called it the silence protocol, though it wasn't really about silence at all. It was about reclaiming the authority you'd been giving away every 10. You justified a boundary to someone who should have simply respected it. Ruth explained it like this. First principle. Your no is a complete sentence, not the beginning of a negotiation, not an invitation for debate, a period, full stop. When someone asks you to do something you don't want to do, no I can't or no thank you is the entire response. The urge to add because is where your power hemorrhages. The moment you attach a reason, you've opened a door for someone to either invalidate that reason or solve the problem your reason presents, forcing you to find another excuse or admit the truth. You simply don't want to. Second principle. Not everyone deserves access to your decision-making process. Your reasons are yours. Your internal landscape belongs to you. Close friends, true partners, people who've earned trust, yes, they get context when you want to give it. But your colleague who wants you to join another committee, your distant relative who questions your life choices, the acquaintance who's offended you won't attend their event? They don't need to understand. They need to accept. Third principle. Explaining yourself to someone who's already decided to misunderstand you is self-betrayal. Watch for this. Someone asks a question, but their face already holds judgment. Someone requests your reasoning, but interrupts with counter-arguments. Someone demands to know why, but really means to tell you why you're wrong. These people aren't seeking understanding. They're seeking leverage. Your explanations are weapons you're handing to your own firing squad. Fourth principle. Silence can be an answer. Not aggressive silence, not punitive silence, but calm, grounded silence that says, I've made my decision and I'm at peace with it. When someone pushes for explanation after you've already declined, you're allowed to just smile, nod, change the subject, let the moment pass. Their discomfort with your unexplained boundary is not your emergency. Fifth principle. Watch what happens when you stop explaining. This is crucial. Don't just implement the protocol. Study the results. Notice who respects your boundaries more when you stop justifying them. Notice who gets angry at the loss of control. Notice how much energy you reclaim. Notice how your anxiety decreases when you're not constantly managing everyone's perception of you. The data will teach you what words never could. Ruth was clear about what this wasn't. This isn't about being an asshole, she said firmly. It's not about disrespecting people or being deliberately cryptic or playing power games. It's about understanding that adult relationships require respecting other adults enough to trust they can handle your decisions without a roadmap of your inner world. She paused. And here's the thing nobody tells you. The people who truly love you, they don't need the explanations. They trust you. It's the people who don't trust you, who see you as a resource to manage rather than a person to respect, who demand the explanations. And those are exactly the people you shouldn't be explaining yourself to. Rachel felt like she was hearing a language she'd forgotten she knew. Everything Ruth said made sense intellectually, but emotionally, it felt like being asked to jump off a cliff. Start small, Ruth advised. One unexplained no this week, just one. See what happens, see if the sky falls, see if people hate you, see if you can survive someone being disappointed without making it your job to fix their feelings. Day 1 of Rachel's experiment felt like standing naked in a boardroom. Her co-worker Jessica asked if she wanted to join the new wellness committee. In the past, Rachel would have launched into a 5-minute explanation about her bandwidth, her current projects, her sleep schedule, her tendency to overcommit, her appreciation for being asked, her guilt for declining. Instead, she heard herself say, "No, but thank you for thinking of me." Jessica blinked, waited. Rachel's mouth physically ached with the need to fill the silence. She could feel explanation rising in her throat like vomit. She swallowed it, smiled. "Oh," Jessica said finally. "Okay, no problem." That was it. No interrogation, no offense. Jessica just moved on. Rachel went back to her desk and had to put her head down because she felt dizzy. It had been that easy. Why had she thought it would be harder? Day 3 brought a bigger test. Her mother called about Thanksgiving. "You're coming home, right? I haven't seen you since August." Old Rachel would have explained about work deadlines, the cost of flights, Marcus's family schedule, her need for rest, her plans to visit at Christmas instead. New Rachel said, "I'm staying here this year, Mom. We'll do Christmas." Silence on the other end. Long silence. Rachel's heart hammered. Then her mother's voice, tight. "I see. Well, I suppose you have your reasons." "I do," Rachel said. She didn't list them. Another pause. "All right then, we'll miss you." They hung up. Rachel sat there shaking, waiting for the guilt to crush her. It came, but it was different than before. Smaller, cleaner, uncomplicated by the exhaustion of having defended herself for 30 minutes while her mother picked apart each reason. This guilt said, "I disappointed someone I love." The old guilt said, "I am a bad daughter and must prove otherwise." She could survive the first guilt. She'd been drowning in the second. Week 2 brought the revelations. Rachel started noticing patterns. The people who accepted her unexplained boundaries without fuss were the people who actually respected her. The people who pushed, who demanded reasons, who acted hurt or confused by her simple no's, those were the people who'd been using her explanations against her for years. Her friend Amanda, for instance. Rachel declined a girls' trip, and Amanda immediately accepted it. "Next time, then," she said warmly. No pressure, no guilt trip, no request for elaboration. But her friend Lauren? "You can't come. Why not? What else do you have going on? Can't you move it? Is it really that important?" Probing, pushing, treating Rachel's no as a puzzle to solve rather than a decision to respect. Rachel had never noticed this before. She'd been too busy explaining herself to see that the explanations were the problem, not the solution. The explanations told people her boundaries were negotiable, that if they just found the right argument, they could change her mind. Marcus noticed the change first in how she was with him. "You seem lighter," he said one evening. "Like something you were carrying is gone." "I stopped explaining myself to people who don't actually want to understand," Rachel said. He grinned. "Your grandmother's thing? Yeah. Is it working?" Rachel thought about it. She'd said no to 6 things that week. 6 things she didn't want to do. 6 simple declines without the accompanying novel. She'd gotten pushback on exactly one, Lauren, and she'd simply repeated, "I can't make it," without elaborating. Lauren had been annoyed, but the conversation ended. In the past, Lauren's annoyance would have sent Rachel spiraling. She would have texted a longer explanation, maybe changed her mind, definitely lost sleep. This time, she'd let Lauren be annoyed, and the world kept spinning. "Yeah," Rachel said. "It's working." 90 days after Rachel stopped explaining herself, her life looked unrecognizable. Not because everything had changed externally. She had the same job, same apartment, same relationship. But internally, something fundamental had shifted. She had energy again, real energy, the kind she hadn't felt since before she learned to perform for approval. It turned out that constantly justifying your existence to others was expensive. Every explanation was a withdrawal from your energy account. Every justification took processing power. Every defense consumed resources that could have gone to actually living. Without that drain, Rachel felt like someone had removed a weight she'd been carrying so long she'd forgotten it was there. Her relationships had sorted themselves. Some people had faded away, specifically the ones who only stayed close because Rachel was easy to manipulate, the ones who relied on her inability to say no, the ones who got angry when she stopped performing emotional labor she'd never agreed to provide. Good riddance. But other relationships deepened. Amanda became closer. Marcus said he felt like he was finally meeting the real Rachel, not the version that constantly sought his approval. Even her mother adjusted. It took a few months of Rachel maintaining boundaries without explanation, but eventually her mother stopped pushing, started respecting. Their conversations became shorter but more genuine. Her work performance had actually improved. Turned out, when you stop attending every meeting and joining every committee out of guilt, you have time to focus on what actually matters. Rachel's boss had noticed. "You seem more strategic lately," he'd mentioned. "More decisive." Because she was. Decision-making was faster when you didn't have to build a legal case for every choice. But the biggest change was internal. Rachel had stopped living in constant anticipation of judgment. She used to walk through life braced for criticism, preemptively building defenses, explaining herself before anyone even asked. Now she moved through the world like someone who belonged in it. Someone who had the right to want what she wanted and not want what she didn't want. Someone who didn't need permission to be herself. She called Ruth to report in. "It worked," she said simply. "Of course it did," Ruth replied. "Because you're not a child who needs to justify herself to parents. You're an adult. Adults make decisions. Other adults respect those decisions. Anyone who doesn't isn't treating you like an adult, and you don't owe children explanations." Rachel laughed. The metaphor was perfect. She'd been letting people treat her like a teenager who needed permission slips when she was a grown woman who could simply decide. "The weirdest part," Rachel said, "is that people actually respect me more now. I thought they'd think I was cold or difficult, but it's the opposite. They take me more seriously." "Because you take yourself seriously," Ruth said. "Respect flows from self-respect. When you treat your decisions as valid without needing to prove it, others follow your lead. When you treat your decisions as negotiable pending sufficient justification, others negotiate. It was that simple and that profound. Chapter. You're doing it right now, aren't you? Reading this and mentally composing explanations for why your situation is different, why you can't just stop explaining yourself, why the people in your life require more context, why your boss, your mother, your friends, your partner would never accept unexplained boundaries. Let me stop you there. That voice in your head, the one generating all those reasons why this won't work for you, that's the same voice that's been exhausting you for years. The voice that says you're only acceptable when you're understandable, that your worth is contingent on others' approval, that you need to earn the right to take up space. That voice is lying. Here's what actually happens when you stop explaining yourself to people. Some people get uncomfortable. Yes, they're used to having access to your decision-making process, used to being able to debate your choices, used to you being malleable. When you become solid, they notice. Some will respect it immediately. Some will push back. Some will fade away. Let them. The people who genuinely care about you don't need paragraphs explaining why you can't attend their party. They don't need a dissertation on why you're choosing a different career path. They don't need your medical records to accept that you're taking a sick day. They trust you. They respect you. They understand that you're a whole person with valid reasons they don't need to audit. The people who demand explanations, they're not confused. They're controlling. They're not seeking understanding. They're seeking leverage. Your explanations are data points they can use to either invalidate your decision or make you feel guilty for it. Stop handing them ammunition. But here's what nobody tells you about this shift. It's not about becoming cold. It's not about disconnecting from people or refusing to communicate. It's about understanding the difference between explanation and justification, between sharing and proving, between intimacy and performance. You can share your reasoning with people you trust without needing them to approve it. You can communicate your process with people you're close to without requiring their permission. You can be open about your thoughts and feelings without making them negotiable. The difference is in your energy. Are you explaining because you want to share or because you need to defend? Are you communicating because it deepens connection or because you're afraid of judgment? Feel the difference. One comes from fullness, the other from fear. Start paying attention to who asks you why. Really pay attention. Notice who accepts your first answer and who pushes for more. Notice who treats your no as valid and who treats it as a puzzle to solve. Notice who respects your boundaries and who sees them as obstacles to overcome. The people who respect you will respect your unexplained decisions. The people who don't respect you will never be satisfied with your explanations anyway. They'll just find reasons why your reasons aren't good enough. You've been trying to explain yourself to people who were never going to understand. Not because you're bad at explaining, but because they benefit from you being confused about your right to decide without defense. Stop explaining, start deciding. Watch what happens. Here's your challenge, starting today, not tomorrow, not Monday, but right now. The next time someone asks you to do something you don't want to do, practice these exact words. No, I can't. Or, no, thank you. That's it. Complete sentence. Then stop talking. Your body will scream at you. Your throat will ache with the need to explain. Your brain will generate 17 reasons you should give them. Ignore all of it. Smile if you want. Be kind if you want. But don't explain. Not to this person. Not right now. See what happens. See if they push. See if you can tolerate their disappointment without making it your emergency. See if the relationship survives your unexplained boundary. If it doesn't, it wasn't a relationship. It was a power dynamic you were losing. Then, notice your energy. Notice how much bandwidth you reclaim when you're not constantly building cases for your right to exist as you are. Notice how much anxiety dissolves when you stop trying to control everyone's perception of you. Notice how much lighter you feel when you stop carrying everyone else's expectations. This isn't about being selfish. This is about recognizing that explaining yourself to people who aren't truly asking is a form of self-abandonment. Every time you justify a boundary to someone who should simply respect it, you're teaching them and yourself that your decisions aren't valid until someone else approves them. You're allowed to want what you want. You're allowed to not want what you don't want. You're allowed to make decisions that serve you without providing a full accounting to people who weren't elected to govern your life. You're allowed to be misunderstood. You're allowed to let people be wrong about you. You're allowed to stop explaining. Leave a comment telling me one thing you're going to stop explaining this week. Just one. It could be small, why you don't want dessert, why you're leaving the party early, why you're not joining that committee, or it could be big, why you're choosing your career over their expectations, why you're ending a relationship, why you're moving across the country. One unexplained decision. One reclaimed piece of your sovereignty. One step toward becoming the kind of person who doesn't need permission to be themselves. And if you found this valuable, if this resonated with something you've been feeling but couldn't name, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Not to explain yourself to them, just to offer them the same freedom you're claiming for yourself. The comments are going to be full of people saying, "But what about?" and listing all the exceptions and special circumstances where you absolutely must explain yourself. To them I say, maybe. Or maybe you're so used to performing that you can't imagine what it feels like to simply exist without justification. There's only one way to find out. Stop explaining. Start living. See what happens when you finally give yourself permission to take up space without apologizing for it. Your life is waiting. Go claim it.